The Case of Anneliese Michel, Germany, 1970s. Introduction: Faith, Fear, and Controversy. In the quiet village of Klingenberg am Main, nestled in the Bavarian countryside of West Germany, a chilling and tragic story unfolded during the 1970s that would ignite a firestorm of debate about religion, mental illness, and the limits of science and faith. The case of Anneliese Michel, a young woman believed by her devout Catholic family and two priests to be possessed by demons, ultimately ended in her death and the prosecution of her caregivers. It remains one of the most infamous and controversial exorcism cases in modern history. This is the story of Anneliese Michel, her life, her suffering, the failed attempts to save her, and the haunting legacy that followed. The Chapter 1, A Quiet Beginning. Anneliese Michel was born on September 21, 1952 in Labelfing, Bavaria, into a deeply religious Roman Catholic family. Her upbringing was steeped in spiritual devotion. Her mother, Anna, was strict and devout. Her father, Joseph, was equally pious. The family attended Mass regularly, and Anneliese herself was described by those who knew her as a kind, intelligent, and sensitive young woman. She was a good student, attended church fervently, and played the piano. From the outside, her life seemed ordinary, even idyllic. But everything changed when Anneliese was 16. The Chapter 2, The Onset of the Strange. In 1968, Anneliese experienced her first seizure. She was diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy, a condition known to cause hallucinations, loss of consciousness, and in some cases, intense religious experiences. After her diagnosis, she was prescribed anticonvulsant medication such as Dilantin. Over time, her condition worsened. She became depressed and withdrawn. She began to hear voices that told her she was damned and would rot in hell. Medical evaluation suggested she was also suffering from depression and possibly psychosis. She was later diagnosed with schizophrenia and treated with more psychiatric drugs. But these treatments didn't help. In fact, Anneliese's mental state deteriorated further, and by 1973, she had become convinced that she was possessed. Chapter 3, Descent into Darkness. Anneliese's symptoms took on increasingly disturbing forms. She claimed to see the devil, described horrifying visions of demons, and insisted that she was being tormented by evil spirits. Her behavior became more erratic and violent. She would growl, scream, tear her clothes, eat insects, and sleep on a stone floor for hours. At times, she became catatonic. Her parents, deeply religious and at a loss, turned away from the medical establishment and toward the church. Despite initial reluctance after much petitioning, the local bishop finally authorized an exorcism in 1975. 2 priests were assigned to the case. Father Ernst Alt, who believed Anneliese was possessed, and Father Arnold Renz, who would conduct the rite. The Chapter 4, The Exorcism Rituals. The exorcisms began in September 1975 and would continue for 10 months. In total, 67 sessions were performed, some lasting as long as 4 hours. The sessions were recorded on audio tape, and the recordings, later made public, captured chilling accounts. Anneliese growling in different voices, referencing hellish imagery, and identifying the names of the demons she claimed inhabited her: Lucifer, Judas Iscariot, Nero, Cain, and others. During these months, Anneliese refused to eat. She said the demons wouldn't let her. Her health plummeted. Her body grew gaunt and emaciated. She weighed only 30 kilograms, about 68 pounds, at the end of her life. She was bruised, battered, and exhausted. She spoke of martyrdom, of redemption through suffering. Her final weeks were filled with horrific agony, punctuated by fervent prayers and violent convulsions. Chapter 5. Death and Aftermath. On July 1st, 1976, Anneliese Michel died in her home. The cause of death was malnutrition and dehydration, compounded by pneumonia and other physical trauma. She was 23 years old. Her death shocked the public. An investigation was launched. How could a young woman surrounded by caregivers, priests, and family die in such a state? In 1978, a trial was held in the town of Aschaffenburg. Anneliese's parents and the 2 priests were charged with negligent homicide. The trial captured national and international attention. The defense argued that Anneliese had freely chosen to stop medical treatment, had consented to the exorcisms, and believed herself to be possessed. The prosecution countered that the priests and parents had a duty of care and had allowed a mentally ill woman to suffer and die needlessly. The court acknowledged that Anneliese had been ill, both physically and mentally, and that the exorcisms may have contributed to her death by delaying effective treatment. All 4 defendants were found guilty of manslaughter resulting from negligence. They received suspended prison sentences and fines. Chapter 6. Legacy and Cultural Impact. The story of Anneliese Michel has never faded from public consciousness. Her grave has become a pilgrimage site for believers. Her tapes and photos circulate widely online. Her case has been the subject of books, academic studies, documentaries, and even horror films. Perhaps the most famous adaptation is the 2005 Hollywood film The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which dramatized the events with a focus on the courtroom trial and supernatural questions. Scholars, psychologists, and theologians continue to debate the case. Was Anneliese truly possessed, or was she a victim of undiagnosed mental illness and religious fanaticism? Could modern medicine have saved her, or did it fail her from the beginning? Some within the Catholic Church believe Anneliese's suffering was real and meaningful. Others regard the case as a tragic cautionary tale of what can happen when religious belief overrides medical care. Chapter 7. A Mirror of Society. The case of Anneliese Michel serves as a dark mirror reflecting the tensions between faith and science, tradition and progress, belief and evidence. It raises uncomfortable questions. Where do we draw the line between spiritual care and medical responsibility? How should society treat the intersection of cultural belief and mental illness? Even nearly 5 decades later, her story resonates, partly because of its horrifying details, but more profoundly because it exposes our deepest fears of losing control, of suffering without reason, of crying for help and not being heard. Anneliese Michel died convinced she was fighting a cosmic battle between good and evil. Whether she was possessed, mentally ill, or both, her suffering was real. And in the end, it was avoidable. Epilogue. The echoes remain to this day. Theologians and paranormal investigators revisit the case, drawn by the mysterious nature of Anneliese's torment. Her recordings remain unsettling, her photographs haunting, and her fate a symbol of unresolved conflict between two worlds, science and the supernatural. The Church has since distanced itself from public exorcisms. Psychiatry has advanced, offering new treatments and understandings. But the questions posed by Anneliese Michel's life and death remain as potent now as they were in the 1970s. In the silence after her final exorcism, in the echo of her desperate cries, we are left with a question that may never be fully answered. Who failed Anneliese Michel, and why? And